Welcome to 2Cents FC. I'm your host, Amobi Okugo, back again with my guy, L. Each week, we'll be talking with individuals from around the soccer world, learning about their stories and getting their unfiltered thoughts and opinions. This week, we're joined by multifaceted broadcast talent and entrepreneur, one of the most well-connected guys in the sport, Hopkins Jr. We'll be talking about Alan's journey through the world of sports and entertainment, from movies, sideline reporting, to working with Power 5 schools and U.S. soccer as a mental performance consultant. We're going to be touching on it all. Alan is someone that I've been fortunate enough to know for quite some time, and we've developed a relationship. So I'm personally excited for this show. And Alan, how you doing today?
Man, I just appreciate you guys. Thank you guys. First time, long time, for real. So this is going to be one of those moments where I'll be driving down the one, right? And listening to the podcast on the radio or on the Bluetooth in the car. So no, I appreciate you guys. And, just happy to be part of the conversation. You guys always make me laugh. I learn a lot, and I'm hopeful to contribute to the body of knowledge, no doubt.
No, that's what it's all about.
Thanks for checking us out too, man. Appreciate it.
So it's only right we had to have you on. You know how we start: 2 truths and a cap. I'm still behind, so I'm hoping you can help me out a little bit for this one.
Okay. So we're just gonna jump right into it, right?
Yeah,
So David Beckham once told me that he liked my style. Okay. Fabio Capello once snubbed a U.S. soccer official to have a conversation with me.
Okay.
In Russia, in Krasnodar. Probably the only black guy to ever be there.
Okay.
Yes. And arguably the best goal ever scored in my college's history was scored off my beautiful left foot.
Oh, okay. You did work with LA Galaxy. I remember that during those years. Fabio Capello, though.
How were those? Were those pretty good? Are those pretty good?
Yeah, those are
pretty good. Okay.
I know you were a baller, but I don't know if he was left-footed. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the goal. I think the other two were like super specific, like too specific to be a lie. So I'm gonna go with the goal.
Capello. What was Capello doing in Russia though? Because he wasn't. Was he the coach? I'm going Capello's a lie. Yeah, I think it was somewhere else. I think it happened, but I think it was someone else because you were specific about it being in Russia. I think it was somewhere else. So that's the lie for me.
But he gave the city in Russia though.
Yeah, true. You're right. Oh,
I don't want to sway you though.
Is it too late to change?
No, I don't know. It's your game. It's your game. It's your game.
I'm sticking with it.
L got me on the man. You got me on my process. It was too specific. It was too specific, wasn't it? It was too specific. So, but do you remember who used to coach the Russian national team?
Oh yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So, no, I mean, is this where I give a little bit of insight into those truths? Is that the good way to, look, Moby, you're right on. I was when I was at ESPN, I got to basically be David Beckham's guy. I was the guy with the mic flag, and we had a couple of fun encounters, a couple of good trips with the team, traveling around. I mean, that was rock star status. It really was. And being on the inside, and just grateful for the Galaxy organization at that time and my ESPN producers who just really kind of charged me as being the David Beckham expert. Man, he gave me a wink and a nod one time. It was like, okay, I see you. And I was just like, oh my goodness. Like, okay, I feel you. Basically I was wearing the same T-shirt and jeans that I wear anyway. It's been my standard. Anyone who knows me, I wear a very monochrome, my grays, my silvers, the same style. Yeah. And, look, really props and respect to Jurgen Klinsmann for giving me an opportunity to be part of his team. And, we had a really good run when we were together in 12, 13, right into 14. We won a lot of games. And that trip was such a fun trip. Got so many great memories of, first, never going to Russia, never been to Russia, and going to a place that was near the Black Sea was something that you don't ever forget. And, I remember going with our videographer, Alejandro Becker, to look for a backpack for Hercules Gomez. I wonder if Herc remembers this story. He sent us to this mall. And real quick, look, Amobi, I appreciate you scheduling, because tomorrow night and last night I would have had a problem because of the Lakers, but that's a whole nother thing. But I remember, only reason I bring it up is because we're in the middle of this mall, and this dude is like, you guys are American. He ends up being from Glendale, like California. Like, it's the craziest thing. And we end up getting him tickets to the game.
Just randomly.
He was like, those two dudes aren't from here. Yeah. And I think they're from SoCal. Like, he was very specific, as I learned later. So, but anyway, Jurgen gave me a great opportunity to be myself. And he empowered me to do a lot of things. Just be a good dude, be a part of the team, be a good glue person, be loyal, be trustworthy, of course, all those things along the way. And, going on that trip and getting to a place where you start really understanding how the team works. And then you start to have those really cool interactions with other federation people, with other coaches. And, I love, Italia 90 is how I really, really, like, my heart fell for the game. Like, I was playing the game. Mexico 86 was like my first glimpses of it. I was born in Berlin, Germany. So that's like my real, I got that. I'm an Army brat. I proudly, and I appreciate you recognizing the junior. My old man was just an incredible dude. OG IT guy in the military. We moved around every 6 months, every 18 months. I had the classic sort of military upbringing. And I'm just thankful for it, because it really did allow me to swim in all these different waters that paved the way for what I'm doing now. But, Jurgen just gave me a chance to be myself and to see myself outside of what I was doing. I'm a defender, Amobi. Like, I see the game in front of me. My two oldest kids are defenders. My youngest, who's the most talented, isn't. She scores bangers. Thank the Lord. It's a lot more fun going to the youth games. Hey, L, it's a lot more fun going to the youth games, right? With the striker. You dropping off the star striker. You know what I mean? It's a different vibe. Your kid plays in the back. You got to listen to all the chatter. You got to wear your earbuds.
All the goals are their fault.
All the goals are their fault. Like, people stress that the ball gets in their own half. So I like showing up with my youngest Sienna, because I'm like, she might do something crazy today. You know what I mean? And we get an ice cream after, like, it's all love, So, but I say all that because the Italian way, the defensive way, is the way I just see the game. And, so I just came, I connected with one of the guys in the federation, and I kind of hit him with my fanboy. I'm like, dude, no, like, Italian soccer, like, how you guys defend. So anyway, he got word to Fabio, man. And before the game, man, we had a moment. He shook my hand. We chatted. I asked him probably like 100 questions in like a minute. You know what I mean? And he probably was like, yeah, dude, relax. But so, no, I appreciate that. And yeah, look, I went to Westmont College. I'm not left-footed. So, Moby, you were on it. You definitely were on it. And ironically, the best goal I ever scored was an own goal, but that's a whole nother story.
so let's talk about it, because obviously soccer's taking you all around the world. But before that, you had, an Army upbringing. You mentioned being born in Germany. Obviously, United States has a lot of German-born Americans that are playing for the national team. Yeah. But when did you fall in love with soccer?
Man, that's a great question. I guess, there's a couple moments that I really think of, actually, if we're going to get into it real quick. You remember, like, I'm old and young enough. Like, I have a crazy DOB, because, like, I remember old stuff, but I can play with all the new stuff, right? And, my parents, they sell in Aurora, Colorado, and I just remember my club coach was like, you got to, watch the World Cup. And I'm like, well, how do you watch it? Right? Like, how do you watch it? Like, I don't know. Like we had 8 channels. And at my grandma's house in rural Mississippi, like when I went down there in the summers with my hair all braided, you know, like a cousin or a nephew or a grandchild could be the person making the foil activate right on the rabbit ears so you can get the clear TV so she could watch Guiding Light in the afternoon. Like that's, you know what I mean? And her soaps and her shows. So, and it was watching RAI, RAI, you know, RAI television. Like,
oh, that was before my time.
Man, like it was, so PBS in Denver, I'm getting deep in the weeds. PBS Denver had like a block where they showed Italian television programming, television from Italy. And during 86, they just were riding hard World Cup. Duh. Yeah. You know, I mean, that's what we do. And seeing those games, I was like, and then I started getting really curious. And then the next year, I got a British club coach. And it opened my eyes. Like it was the first time I saw black footballers were West Ham, Arsenal. Like, I'm like, you know, like the light bulb goes on, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, I got the good straw. I've always had good coaching.
Yeah.
I've always had like all the coaches in my tree, Hall of Famers, legends. I just got blessed. And coming up in Denver, Lauren Donaldson, Dave Durr, Bruce Brown, those are my coaches, my club and high school coaches. So I was learning a lot. And then, you know, playing in Santa Barbara, you know, the thing that I learned the most was actually playing men's league on Sundays. You know, playing those real
league
games.
Is different in SoCal. Men's league is different in SoCal. It's a whole nother level.
So serious. Yeah, you know, I mean, you're playing like very good small college ball in Santa Barbara and you're loving it. I had a great club coach college coach and Dave Wolf. I mean, it's a real environment to this day. You know, it's the epicenter in Central Coast for players. Rudy Ibarra, his son Marco, Roro, you know Roro, Alcaraz, Richie, Johnny. Like, it's like a whole different thing. I mean, so it's funny because I have this chameleon upbringing living in Missouri, New Jersey, Alabama, Alaska. But when I really started forming my opinion about the game, it was born on like the Latin style, right? The German sort of pragmatic organization. Like, I love how the Italians are like, we got our one, we're good, you know, like, you know, that whole stuff. And I just was curious. Like, my parents just made me a curious person. So, you know, my dad never gave me any answers, which made me mad at the time. And he just told me where to go fish, man. Like, hey, this is how you figure it out. So that experience really allowed me to play in all these different places in soccer. And I just love the game. You know, like I do real estate development day to day, and I love it. But the game, man, like that's the thing that I just always have resonated to, and I still sort of pivot around for sure. I've been blessed.
So you mentioned like, you know, all these different cultures that helped impacted your view on the game, and then, you know, being exposed to, you know, the black players for West Ham and Arsenal. You know, obviously they're overseas at the time, but within you growing up. And I definitely want to ask, like, were you like the only black person? And then now that you have your own kids playing soccer, how has that changed over time? You know, from the standpoint of like, are there more of us in the game based on what you're seeing?
Wow, you guys come in with I wasn't ready for the Oprah stuff, dude. You know, you're going to get me all in my but honestly though,
we're almost 50 episodes in, man. We improving.
Hey, I think about this stuff. And you know this, and this is probably why you're going that way too, is I think about this a lot, having my kids, my oldest, Sydney, University of San Diego, playing in the WCC, little props to Santa Clara for bringing it to the West Coast. So she's playing in a championship conference. I'm proud of that kid, you know, only black player on the team. Only one other teammate kneeled with her this year. You know? Only one other teammate kneeled with her this year throughout the course of the year. And I'm not going to say, but that kid and her family, she's not a kid, she's a beautiful person. Not too far from me here in Northwest LA. Like, they know my love for her and her family. And So I think about that. And I had a really good conversation with Danielle Slayton about this. I guess another Santa Clara shout out. I love Danielle. She's real people. We worked Olympics together back in 2012. She's good people. We work together closely on Score. We have our Thursday calls. And we were just talking through it one day, or basically what happens, and Amobi knows this, L. I just ping people with text messages, and it could be benign. It could be benign, like, oh, it's so dope today, or be awesome because you are, or it'll be like the most controversial thing you could ever think of, and there's no rhyme or reason, right? Amobi, there's no, you're non sequiturs.
You might need to get Telegram, because sometimes,
man, like for real, like people probably like, what is he talking about? Like, but I tell people I sleep little and I run a lot, so I'm always in my head, and I'm finally comfortable in my own skin. But what I equated to in my daughter Sydney's situation, and fellas, she's 4.0, she's going to graduate in 3 years. She got named captain of the team. She's 19 years of age. She graduated high school early. She's one of those kids. She's special. Fire. Yeah. She's fire. And what I told Danielle was this, and the juxtaposition I gave her was a real youth soccer game, rec game. A kid gets hurt. What does everyone do? What do the players do? They take a knee to show empathy and to give pause to that person that's hurting, right? They took a ball to the face. That sucks. And when you're a little kid, you're 5 or 6, you ain't really seen those stars before. You don't know what's happening, right? We all been there. We've all been there. And you do that because there's a spirit, a community, a fellowship in that moment. You're a gladiator. You're in the arena. You got it. We're kneeling with you. Referee comes over. They wave on the coach. I've been there. You know what I mean? Like, facts. I was coach of the year in SoCal. Like, I know I'm talking like real experience. And I say that because that's what my daughter was going through for the last year. And my daughter, Sydney, I've been taking her to protests since she was like 12. She's like about that life. You know what I mean? So, she just always, I love how she just really has empowered herself. But I say, like, my daughter was hurting. All Black players were hurting. And to have teams not show empathy, and you sort of ubiquitous, unanimous, like, I'm hurting with you, that hurt for me, because my kid's young, she's my kid. My son, Santiago, he's come up through the U.S. Development Academy, ECNL, he's won all the different patches you got to wear right now to be an elite soccer player. Gonna play at Cal, boo, Amobi, in the fall.
I can't say nothing right now. UCLA is struggling.
I'm that dad though. Like, I'm like that Richard Williams on that part. Like, tell me I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. Tell me I've been wrong about my kids, and I feel that way. And I've learned to advocate for my kids, because some people are uncomfortable with what I'm not the normal parent. I'm not a normal parent. Like, I'll judge you on your training session in a second and break it down and audit it like I'm giving you an A license with Dave Chesler and Carlos Juarez back in the day. Like, you want me to do that? I can do that. If you want me to be called the assessor, what I mean? Like I'm not the normal parent. But the problem is that people don't know, like, I live to serve. I love the game. Game's giving me everything. But, to come back to your prompt, which is such a good one, and my youngest, Sienna, who I mentioned, there's just still not that many Black kids. There aren't. And what I realized is that when I felt like I had a lot of Black people on the team, there was like 3 or 4 of us, right? Yeah. But then I also kind of look at like a team like the Columbus Crew, right? I'm like, that is a Black team. That's a dark team. And I'm sure by numbers, that's the metric, that's the KPI. So seeing where the league has come from the top, like, I'm hopeful, right? Yeah. That the Black player will continue to emerge. But in reality, in college, if you look at being on the board of trustees in my alma mater, Westmont College, I got to see like the real numbers. What's higher education for Blacks? 2%, 3% at any university? You know what I mean? 2 to 3% at a PDW as opposed to an HBCU, obviously. So, when you think about the black player in college soccer, men's Division I. I think they're fourth. It's according to the NCAA, it is white, it is Latino, non-resident alien, and then black, right? And okay, that's what it is. So, I just what I really hope to change is, as representation and decision making, because that's the thing that's the most important. But when I think about my own journey and seeing it through my kids' lens, is like I'm curious sometimes about what they think about that. Yeah. I do. I really, really am. Luckily, what was really helpful for my oldest daughter, Sydney, along the way, is that when she was coming up through the national team, the training centers, and the pool and stuff like that back in the day, ODP, it was an aggregate of all the good black players, Latino players in SoCal. Mm-hmm. So you get to play with different players. You know what I mean? Like the me officials at your spot, UCLA. That's one of my daughter's oldest friends and OGs in the game. So, that's always good to see. And then, the irony is this is, my son's going to Cal. He plays with two other black kids. One's going to UCD, Davis, up by your way. Yeah. And the other one's going to Cal with him. So what am I, there's nothing to be mad about, right? You know what I mean? Like they're going to great spots and they're going to have an opportunity to grow and use the tools that the game gives you along the way. But, the thing that really, that I really tried to do just cruising around SoCal is just, if I see a black coach, a black administrator, whatever, I make sure I give a nod, a pound, some love if I know them, things like that, because that's the place where nothing has changed. And that's the place where I really want to see more of that representation along the way. But, my kids are also LA kids. They didn't have to move around.
That's true.
So their sense of themselves is very much kind of rooted in, they're just native Californians, man. They love the Lakers. They think they win all the time. Yeah. They got swag, they think Hollywood's cool, vintage, supreme.
Yeah. You brought up representation and obviously, that's something that, we're going to get into later, everything that you're doing behind the scenes and on the front lines. But looking at your resume and your experiences getting into the sports and business and entertainment space, how was it for you? Like, how did you get from, finishing college and then getting into the opportunity that you have had thus far?
What I've learned is you need advocates and you need heroes. And as I start to really look at the legacy I'm trying to live every day and to impart, I think about the people that really helped me. And it's the Siggy Schmidts, it's the Jurgen Klinsmanns, it's the Dave Wolfs, and Doug Hamilton. I appreciate those guys. And my goal is to be that person they were to me, to other people that just so happen to look like me, right? Mm-hmm. They're the ones who are like, oh, playing soccer is what you do, is not who you are. Broadcasting is what you do, is not who you are. And this is what I tell my college football prospects is like, you have to get comfortable being who you are. And at the end of the day, like how the world sees you is not how you see yourself almost every single time. And trying to get them to believe it and embody it. And I've just grown in confidence, because of those people, because they've given me unique opportunities. And what I've learned is, and you guys know this, like no one's giving anyone anything, right? You want a job in MLS in the front office, there's 27 front offices, go get it. And you got to be about that life. Now, do you think sometimes, it's hard to get the opportunity to have the conversations? Absolutely. 1,000,000%. But, a part of me always, and maybe it's some naivete to be really honest and vulnerable, is like, I just feel like soccer people at the end of the day are still looking to play with the best 6 dudes in a 7v7 competition and training, right? Mm-hmm. Like they trying to win the day. They want, especially now you get to take the picture. It's cool. Like I would love to be playing now because you win the 7v7 on a Tuesday on a hard day. You get to send the picture on the gram, like we won today. Everyone's hyped. And you know what those games are like. Those are the games you miss. Honestly, like sometimes, like where people's legacy is cemented. Like sometimes you think, like I think fans are so funny to me because, I mean, it's you guys are playing, people are playing. It's chess, not checkers. But fans, we see it as checkers. But when you're in it, it's so complicated. It's algorithms, it's chess. It's like you're thinking 10, 12 moves ahead. Even when you think your club isn't and your manager isn't, trust me, they are. And that's where fans need to just like take a deep breath and understand that like even the worst Premier League manager or MLS coach or is still an MLS coach or a first team manager in the Premier League. Like, you know, you can have your opinions about how effective people are, whatever. But I think there should be more default respect for that stuff to know how difficult it is. It's really, really hard. And, you know, I think what people need to do is see themselves how they want to be. And when I think about representation and opportunity and things like that, I think about just an opportunity to be great along the way. And I just really had a really narrow focus. And, you know, it's part assimilation. It's part, you know, talking code. It's you know, we're on the couch now, so I'm just going to be honest. Like our dexterity and our mobility, I think, as Black men and Black women is just phenomenal. I just really do. And the one thing that's happened over the last year, we're coming up on George Floyd anniversary as we get together and record this. It's like, okay, I think about my own personal journey. I was sleeping last year. I was happy kind of just going on. And then I realized like I'm pretty far away from what I want to do, which is run a team and be involved in those decisions again. And the idea that someone's not capable because of, you know, what they look like is still kind of incredulous, right? Mm-hmm. But it's so real. It is so real. And what I've just tried to do is understand like my own value, my own worth, and make sure my intent is known and hope that people still want to have the best people. But I think about what something, you know, DeMarcus Beasley said, who's a part of SCORE I've gotten to know, is like, you know, sometimes people feel threatened. And I say this humbly, is like, maybe that's how some people have seen me, but I'm not that way. Like, I'm really not. I understand, you know, it's called an 11. It's called an 18. It's called a roster. There's roles for everyone in any championship organization. And I learned this from like, you know, the experience that have served me well has been outside of the game in the last 5 to 8 years. Like you go in that building in Tuscaloosa and you have to shake Nick Saban's hand and you got to tell him how you're going to talk to your team and what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. And you have to make sure he understands who you are and what you're about. And you still sort of get that door open for you. Like it gives you confidence. It does. Yeah. And you see things differently. You see how, wow, that's how people manage people. That's how you are in this room. That's how you affect the whole building, you know? And, you know, so I'm thankful for those opportunities, but it always comes back to the game. Yeah. I try to leave the game, L and Amobi, and it brings me back. And now I'm finally comfortable, you know, like this is what I want to do. I'm in that space. I think my time is coming. I got some exciting things coming. And you know, patience is a companion of wisdom.
Fact.
So if you're going to be wise, then you have to exercise those things. So, you know, I've had such a miraculous journey in the game, and I know how I want the next act to play out, more not the chapter, but the actual act. And I'm okay. I'm okay for that.
So for the young Black individual, like what's one piece of advice, you know, if they want to break into like that sports entertainment industry?
So you really have to say, this is what you're about. And I heard this from, I had this amazing speech coach. I do want to shout him out, Arthur Joseph. When I was at the height of my game at ESPN, this guy, Arthur Joseph, in LA, he's the guy. Like he works with like, just, he helps you get your voice right. And he helped me understand that like, it's not just your voice. It's how you're embodying your spirit, what you're doing, how you're doing it, right? How are you communicating who you are? And there were a lot of techniques, like, you know, I'm like, oh, this is why opera singers sing this way. Like, this is how Luther sings his way. I'm trying to sound like Maxwell too, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to just come across like, wow, like I can't believe this cat, just when I'm just saying hello in the morning. But I say all that, and he's around a lot of Hall of Famers. He does a lot of work working with athletes doing their Hall of Fame speeches.
Okay.
And being around these Hall of Famers, I was like, dude, these dudes are different. And I'm talking about like NFL Hall of Famers, like top dudes, like the guys in their position, best ever. You can fill in the blanks, special players. And I'm like, man, these dudes operate differently. And what I realize is that in that circle of Hall of Famers, there's people that are even more about it. And my kid, my son, Santiago, like we came up Kobe together. You know what I mean? And Kobe's legacy, that mentality and that mindset. And I would tell the young Black person, entrepreneur, whatever, is like, curate your own mindset, right? Like, what is it that makes you you? And I recently heard this from a great person in the league office. Is like, don't sell, tell. Like, like you need to really be on it and about it. And I would say that to anyone. I teach in a part of a senior seminar class in my alma mater, and helping them transition as seniors into the workplace, interviews, CV, resume writing, like the rote stuff. And it's about not sounding like me or you're ready for broadcast television. It's all about answering who you are. And also understanding the audience. People are busy. Like, people don't like hiring people sometimes. So, I think mentoring is important. You got to have heroes. I mentioned my heroes earlier by name. You got to have people like that. You really do. And I think if you do, you have a great opportunity to live out your dreams. But I think you really got to be about it. Like, if you're an athlete, don't ever forget what that's like. Don't ever let that drive go. If you're an early riser, a late grinder, whatever it is, those attributes and characteristics are the things that people remember. And then the last thing I would say is, like, have a real skill set. Because some people, it's interesting. I was thinking about this the other day in kind of preparation of this. Is like, I heard an MLS coach recently tell a person I've mentored for a long time in the performance space that they didn't like Swiss Army knives. They liked a specific tool, right? Mm-hmm. And my first response was like, I get it, right? I get it. I need someone to do a certain role and aspect. But then when I started thinking, I'm like, isn't life sort of more Swiss Army knife and liberal arts if you're really going to be empowered and happy and joyous? Like, to me, it's like, so are you not a coach, a father, a husband, a son, a brother, a teammate? Like, how many fingers am I counting? I feel like I'm like my 6-year-old nephew. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, life is Swiss Army if you're going to be happy about it and if it's going to be your thing. Now, I've also met some coaches, and that's why I love soccer, because there's some people who are like, I'm about that life. Don't bother me. Yeah. I love, man, those are some of my favorite coaches, right? Like, no, I don't really have a family. No, like, I just consume the game, and you know who they are instantly. And I'm okay with that because it's almost like a choice they've made. So I think there's always that position of people don't know what your value is or what you do. And you have to be ready to say that all the time. And, that was the ESPN life I lived. You had to be ready to say what shows you're on, what KPIs you were hitting back before they were KPIs, when we were like programming notes. Like, people wanted to know that stuff. And I think those are all sort of important things that I think are important for anyone that's up and coming, that they want to maybe hang on and think about deeper.
Perfect. So changing gears real quick.
Yes.
Say you get back into broadcasting. Fox
Yes.
Soccer, NBC, ESPN, they all hit you up with the same offer proposal. Who are you choosing?
The same offer. So look at you, man. You box me in, like, everything on the term sheet's the same.
Term sheet's the same.
Okay. Dang. So you're smart. You're going to keep me pinned in on this. You're not going to let me out. Yeah. So, I mean, ESPN still to this day was the place where it felt like I made it. Mm-hmm. It did. And but Fox also felt like I made it. And doing the NBC Olympics also felt like I made it. But, you know, if you're going to do any games right now, like if someone was like, Alan, we want you to work as many games, and I was on like that Mike Tirico love, right? Where they're just like, hey, then, you know, name your deal, how many games you want to work. You know, I feel like ESPN has got more games, you know, I do. And, you know, yeah, I guess Fox is back, or, you know, who's got the World Cup package? Like, I used to be so deep in that stuff. I forget where the rights are, but I know Fox has got the next one.
Fox has it, the next one.
Yeah, Fox has the next one.
But CBS is kind of come out of nowhere, and like, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an arms race.
Yeah, it is going to be an arms race, but, you know, I think it felt so big at ESPN. But I got to tell you, and I'm not trying to bail on this answer, the cool thing about deep soccer production, they were good producers. Because so what makes a great broadcast
is a good producer.
Is a great producer and great director, like out the jump. If your talent is good, then you're laughing. You're having good meals before the game. You're having a couple nightcap after. You know you've arrived. Like, you're working with big time people. And it never felt like that marriage was as good at ESPN. But man, I've worked so many games with just other people that you would just be like, wow, that person's really good. They run a good truck. They run a good show. They know the sport. They know the drama. They're not trying to force it in. Yeah. So I definitely appreciate that. But, you know, definitely ESPN is still feels like the gold standard. But man, you'd have to say how many games I'm working, because, you know, NBC just got like a couple games here and there. But those Olympics coming up is going to be fun, though. But it's a good question. It's a good question.
Like Charles Barkley said, he don't want to live that ESPN life. They got Stephen A. working like a dog.
Hey, that is, you know what? Actually, now that you said that, that is facts. Like, they are all about, they like to compensate you. Hey, but you're working. Man, like, I used to go do all these ESPN news hits at this studio in LA, actually right off of Robertson, like West LA, like some just deep LA stuff, Culver City area, kind of more actually like Palms. But man, you know, they were like, oh, you got to comment on this. I was like, okay. And I'm like, you know, I live in the Valley, right? Like, it's fun. Like, there's going to be traffic, but they're like, we got the window, we got the satellite time. So yeah, but I never felt like I was in it more than working every day. So that's that's the rub, you know? So.
Yeah. And to speak on your point about producers, I want a quick moment. Shout out to Scott Riddell. I think you know him as well. You know,
yes,
one of the best soccer producers in the game.
I was thinking of him, you know, Ken Neal, you know, Mike Foss, like there's like Chris Alexopoulos, like there were some guys, and Shaw Brown. Like if you were, Shaw Brown, you know, if you're in the room with them, even if you're doing sideline reporting, you know, it's a small piece. They make you feel like what you have to say and your contribution to that whole process is important. And I always appreciated that, because there are shows and programs where, you know, I worked a lot of college basketball. I worked a lot of other events, ESPN, and some guys were like, I don't care.
Yeah.
You could be breaking the story of the year. You're like interrupting my show, my game, you know, and people are competitive like that, you know, and that's how it is. But no, you know, there's some really good people, and I appreciate you mentioned Scott, because Scott's definitely one of those OGs, and someone I think about often as someone who gets it, and definitely the game is good when he's around it, for sure.
So you've witnessed a lot of iconic sports moments. If you were to make like your own, like, you know, top 10, like is your catalog, what you going with?
Wow, that's a good one. Like, and it's like just like kind of special to me, like random stuff in a way, so like, for example, like, so let me give you like an example, and you tell me if that's like, if this is kind of what you're thinking about is, so a top 10 moment for me is US Algeria in South Africa and Pretoria. I was there, but here's the thing. I watched that game in an empty suite with Arsene Wenger. He was working for Canal Plus, the French broadcaster.
We low-key got to make this like the name drop podcast because you've been naming so many people. You're so connected. You're so connected, man.
Connected and respected.
Man, like, so that was like a personal like highlight. Like, you know, like I'm there chopping it up because I was like there was 4 of us on the ESPN team that covered that team. Okay. I was Jeremy Schaap's bullpen guy. Jeremy's amazing people. I love Jeremy, but he's like, you know, I got a den full of Emmys. You know what I mean? Like he's such a good dude. His father, Dick, you know what I mean? Like Jeremy's just good people, man. You guys would like him. He's a good dude. And he's the guy at ESPN. So, you know, it's like being the backup quarterback. Like you get your reps when you get them, and you just got to not throw an interception on scout team, and you'll get more reps. It's that kind of vibe. And every once in a while you make a bad read, and they're like, man, well, you haven't been paying attention in hours. Like, no, I haven't. I haven't done anything in 30 minutes. So anyway,
let's go from the sidelines then. Like 10, top 10 from the sidelines.
Yeah.
Like who was on the call.
So that's a good one. Gosh, I would.
And we could bring it down to 5 if you want.
No, you know, let's do 5 for sure. You know, Twellman's bike in the Eastern Conference Final against Chicago, because I had the perfect like Pele victory angle. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, I think he's gonna bike it. Oh, he's biking it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's going in before anyone else. So that was a great one. Brad Evans, Jamaica World Cup qualifying. I always talk about World Cup qualifying. When I talk to teams about understanding who you are and your value and being ready, I think about the Hex 10 games. And I can tell you in the World Cup qualifying cycle in 2014, being a part of Jurgen's staff, there were 8 heroes in those 10 games. 8 heroes. And Brad Evans with that day was the game in Jamaica. And that stadium was like electric. They had a DJ like on this trolley thing that was going around and boom, boom, boom. It was like the craziest atmosphere. So I definitely remember that one. This same cycle, Mixed Discarud scored that late goal in Panama that knocked Mexico out. Remember that? That was a crazy, crazy game because I'd never seen a stadium like turn on its ear in a second. And when you're kind of in those moments, you're like, oh my gosh, like, did that really happen? Like your senses kind of go to different places, which is like always just like such an amazing feeling along the way. So, you know, those are the ones that jump out at me along the way that I kind of hang on to in terms of soccer. I got a couple other random basketball ones, but I certainly want to, you know, definitely keep it moving for sure.
No, respect. And you talked about, I know we talked offline about this because there was a tweet earlier today and you talked about, you know, being part of the, you know, with the Cameroon national team in 2002.
Yeah. You know, so, you know, quick story. So I played college ball with a guy named Kai Habermeyer, and he ended up being the rep for Puma because he's German for all of Africa. My college teammate. All of Africa. Like, that's I'm not crazy. Even kidding you. It was crazy. And he's like my guy. You know, we played together. We won a lot together. We played in the back together. You know, the whole bit. Like, he's married to his college sweetheart, who's a classmate of mine, the whole thing, right? So this is funny how life works. So I've been working my way up at Fox Sports World at the time for the really baby OGs. I'm coming up at Fox Sports World. I'm Sky Sports correspondent. The World Cup comes up. And our executive producer says, hey, you're our guy. We're going to send you over there. You're our guy. I'm writing for .com. You know, this is 2001, 2002. Yeah. So this is like a great package, right? They're going to send me over. I'm there for 6 weeks. And then 2 weeks before, they go, you're going to go to Japan. You're not going to cover the U.S. team in Korea. And I was mad. I was really, really mad about it. And didn't really know how to respond. I didn't really have any leverage anyway, you know, but I was really disappointed because I felt like they took that that's a prime position to be the guy covering the U.S. team, and they ended up having that great run. I knew the guys from the U17s, you know, Bees and Land, you know what I mean? Like I was a part, I had a little bit of juice that I was going to try to use. And, you all the resources were going to South Korea, and nothing was going to basically a one-man band. And it ended up being the best thing that ever happened. It ended up being the best thing that ever happened because I got to cover the entire tournament in Japan by myself. I made my own itinerary. I was like, I'm going to these games. And my buddy Kai was there as the rep for Cameroon. He's like, hey, man, like, let's do this. So I was embedded with the Cameroon national team for a week.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it was amazing. I mean, I see across my room here, like I got my Roger Mila, picture, like one of my proud moments, because to bring it full circle, Italia 90
when they made that run.
Italia 90 was that game. I get the chills because I remember watching at the foot of my parents' bed, because we only had the one TV in our house because my dad didn't want to have another TV and he wanted it in his room. So, when they weren't there, I got to watch TV, and man, I recall that game to this day and how it made me feel. It gives me goosebumps. So being around that team, and the coolest story was watching, you remember the opening game of that tournament, France, Senegal.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I watched that game with the team in the team room, meal room, right? And it ended up being like team dinner. You know how these things, you know how these team things guys go. Like it can be 4 or 5 hours out of your day just being part of the team, right?
Yeah.
And man, the emotion like in that room of like when Senegal won was like, oh, we're gonna win. Like it turned. Like I remember like riding down the elevator and then riding back up like 4 hours later. They were like, oh. And just the vibe, I mean, you're talking about Rigobert Song, Pierre Wome, Patrick Sufo gave me his jersey. He's one of my guys. A young 21-year-old Eto, 21. Like I think he was at Mallorca, I think even. Like we didn't even, we already know where he was going to be.
Yeah.
So, that was such a great experience because I felt like really like part of their group, and I'm like, I'm not African, Nigerian through descendant, but not through family, like like yourself, which is a whole different. So, but yeah, that was such a great time, and so many other little just fun little, but that was if I would have gone to South Korea, I never would have had opportunity to be around the team and start what's been sort of the journey I'm on right now in terms of really kind of leaving a real important legacy in the game and for people like us in the game for sure.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to my next question, because you talked about that opportunity where you kind of were able to do things, solo and on your own. And then you've had the opportunity to be a columnist and, do original programs. So what are some of those projects that you've, found joy in and like brought excitement to you? Those like original programs that you've done?
Yeah, on the production side, entertainment side, for sure. I think about, I was blessed to be one of the producers for the Gold trilogy on Disney, Gold: The Dream Begins. That was a fun time for my family and I, because you're part of a Disney movie trilogy and you're part of that whole car wash and the machinery there. I was working at ESPN at the time, so I thought I was getting equity.
You're still getting them royalties. You're still getting them royalties then.
Those checks are gone, and at the end, those checks are like not even worth the whole processing. But it's one of those things. You're like, I'll put away.
If we can make a Space Jam remake, we can make a Gold trilogy remake.
Man, that's such a good point. I should bring that back up.
Yeah,
but that was a great opportunity.
It's going to be African American.
Yeah, that's something. That's interesting because. When I think about, I talk to Mo Adu a lot. I'm really happy for his platform. It's really important for him. I'm always in his ear. I'm blowing him up, just like I was telling you guys earlier. I'm going to be doing the same to L too. You're just going to get random shots just from the West Coast on random stuff. And, I had no idea, actually. This is how crazy. So not until Black History Month, this past one, did I realize I was the first lead Black soccer broadcaster, like coming up. I had no idea. And, like my family pointed it out, they can Google me, whatever. And it's like, I never thought of it that way. I really, really never did, because I was just trying to do the job and do the work. And, to me, it's like there should be so many more, I guess, along the way. And the analyst role is easy. I would like to see way more Black play-by-play people. That's where, when I was really doing a lot of that work, when I was, getting mentor from like Gus Johnson and people in the game, Mike Wilbon, who recently got into the NBA Hall of Fame. Like, he's been the mentor to many people at ESPN, but he's someone who put his arm around me. Like, it's like, that's the part I'd really like to see. I want to see that sort of next generation of people who are going to be creating content along the way. But the gold movies I'm very proud of. I love my time. The Olympics is probably the thing that made my parents the most proud, doing the London Olympics. That was like a real, my dad was a hard, my dad was a hard military man. You know what I mean? A real hard military man.
Yeah.
So I definitely know that meant a lot to him. And I earned some really good battlefield promotions too during that tournament, which I felt like, games that came my way that were kind of in the air, that were sort of based on sort of, it's like refereeing in a way, right? In a tournament, you get more assignments as you do well, which as you should. So I appreciate that time. The NBC machinery is like 30 Rock is real. You know what I mean? Like, they do that very well. Like that content, like you can say whatever you want to say. Like what we're going to see this summer, pandemic or not, people are going to forget like, oh, NBC, they just can do 100,000 million hours of programming. That looks perfect. Yeah. And that's what everyone's really trying to do in the essence. In every show, you're just trying to have a perfect show. So, but those are the things I'm proud of. I'd love to continue to mentor. I'd love to see a new generation of broadcasters come through. I think there are some Black voices out there as well. And it's going to be a matter of them reaching out to the network and who knows who wants to be the next Sue Holden, the next Taylor Twellman, because there's always those spots.
Yeah.
So it's just like someone's going to have that vision, just like I'm going to be a professional player, I'm going to be an owner, I'm going to be a president. So someone's got to have that dream. And if anyone's listening to this, they want to reach out, like please do. Be more. Those are the kind of people that slide into my DMs, unfortunately. People. But I'm happy though, because those are the people that I definitely like to help the most, for sure. So I appreciate you asking.
No, respect. I mean, 98% of people don't follow up. So you got Alan. Like,
is that the number? Is that the number?
Well, if it isn't, I just made it up. But
wow.
you got people. I'm just the point I'm trying to make is that you're saying
I'm trying to learn. No, I'm not questioning. I was more incredulous. Like, wow, like people really be dropping the ball. I didn't understand.
I'm saying like you're telling people to reach out. So this is like an opportunity to definitely reach out. If you have any questions, if you're looking for mentorship, if you're looking for a pathway, definitely do that. I mean, we're going to definitely follow up. You're someone I talk to on a weekly basis already.
I'll be reaching out for sure.
But let's get back to how did the Gold Trilogy come about? Because obviously, you're connected. But how did this one happen?
So I haven't told this story in a minute, but it's really cool because Mike Jeffries, who's the executive producer, is a Liverpool man, Liverpool man, and this is back when if you came to the States, you know how many ex-Brits are in LA. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's like two communities. There's like the Hollywood ex-Brits. And people just hard from England, and then there's like the West Side, Santa Monica, like people who don't ever really go down to the 10. You know what I'm saying, right? Yeah. And I used to navigate between those two groups. And there is a guy named Mike Jeffries. Really shout out to him, another guy who just talk about following up. He was watching a Liverpool game that I was broadcasting from the studio, and dude had mad hustle. Because I learned that he had a golden parachute because he had sold a publishing company in Australia. Okay. He had like the dopest spot, and Amobi in Hollywood. Like I'm talking like 2 infinity pools and like all the views, like the whole. When I first time I met him, I was like, this can't be real. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm still driving up this hill. You know what I mean? Like, where are we going? And so dude was living the life. He had the part, and he was like, I have an idea for this movie. Can you make some introductions? And I kid you not, man, I was like, I'll open up the Rolodex, or as my kids say, the paper wheel. Right? The paper wheel. Like, you really wrote it down and it was on a piece of paper, like, and then what? It's like, oh yeah, it was on a wheel. Like, for what? What if you didn't have the Rolodex? Like, I guess you didn't make the call, you know? So, but anyway, so he hit me up. He said, let's go for it, man. I just hit up my network. And this is like, honestly, this is like late 20s, early 30s, Alan. So I'm just like running around. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just like, I'm going to outwork the whole thing.
Yeah.
Not efficient. It's like a running form. Like he's fast, but man, he got his arms going like country fast. Like, no technique, no refinement, energy going everywhere but down the lane, right? And that's what I describe my sort of early corporate years. But I knew I had the relationships and I knew I had the hustle. So I ended up calling a college friend of mine who was a mad hustler at Coke. He had like 8 promotions in like 5 years. And he just was like hustling. He was like coming up, like fighting dudes for shelf space in Pacoima and Silmar, like coming up in the Coke game. So I said, hey man, I have an idea.
Not the other
soda.
Yeah, exactly. Coca-Cola, exactly. And he was just a superstar. His name is Danny Stepper. He's a legend in the beverage industry. Like, he's taken so many beverage companies from an idea to a real product. It's crazy. He's nuts. But I knew what he was about because we were college classmates, and I knew he had hustle. And I said, hey, I think we can go get some corporate money. Like, go talk to your people at Coke. And man, we ended up putting together like this partnership deal with Adidas, Coca-Cola. Thank you very much, L. Major League Soccer. And we said, we're going to bring the marketing and partnership support. We had a Latino agency who came on board, and we just were doing it, man. Like, lunch at the Ivy, drinks at Trader Vic's. Like, I was like, we were in it, man. And it was coming together. And the coolest story I tell, there's 2 cool stories. One, the premiere in London was a life highlight. You know, the premiere in London, you know, was just an unbelievable thing. I still remember it to this day. It was just a great, fun trip, the whole bit. And then the other part is people who really, really know me know the mother of my kids used to be the head athletic trainer at UCLA. She's now a registered nurse. And I had those broadcasting hours, right? Kind of Hollywood hours. So I was raising my kids. I was morning shift, right? So my 2 oldest kids are only, this is funny, they're only 18 months apart. My 2 oldest, Sydney and Santiago. Like, I mean, just chaos, man. Just 2 kids, just chaos every turn. But we didn't have any real daycare. But luckily, my daughter was crazy mad behaved. And my son didn't say anything. He just sucked his thumb. I'm calling him out right now. And he was just mad cute. That's what he did. He was mad cute. His name is Santiago. They call him Baby Ago. He would just sit for as long as he needed to. So I got to take him to these meetings with the goal producers because it was low key, right? And they kind of liked that I was a responsible adult, I think, too, as I learned later out of that group, you know? They were living the Hollywood life, you know what I mean? So, man, I used to bring my son around, and he's like in the carrier still, and his name is Santiago. Well, the name of the character of the movie is Santiago.
Yeah, Santiago Munez.
And Mike Jeffries looked at my son, and he was like, that's who the character is going to be. And so, you know, so that I think about that part of it too. You know, that was a really cool little add-in. He gets embarrassed when I tell that story because, you know, when you're 18, you know, you got to keep your street cred, whatever street cred you get, you know. So yeah. I know, right? So, but yeah, I think about that oftentimes, and you know, being involved in that. And then, you know, the second one, real quick, you know, that's when everyone doubled down. Beckham came on board. With that, we had the access to Real Madrid. And then that was a whole nother thing when you're out like training and you're like telling the cinematographer, like, yeah, that's Raul. Yeah, he's really good. Like, I'm trying to be professional, but I'm also like, look, I don't want to miss anything. And these dudes are real Hollywood people. Like, they don't really care. You know, they shoot like in Gibraltar, like cool stuff, right? I'm like, can we have this meeting in 20 minutes? Because we're at Old Trafford and we should just be like taking this in. So, but yeah, man, I think about that often. It was a lot of fun, and you're right, man. We should definitely, 20-year anniversary. What do you think, man? We should bring it back. I think 2003 is a release.
We need that.
Updated some. I think it's a good call.
I know a couple people that can help with that.
I like that. I think that's a real conversation that needs to be had for sure.
So since then, you've started a production company and you've done more documentaries. Can you touch on that a little bit as well?
Yeah. So and thank you for that. We did a movie at South by Southwest, won a couple awards called Accidental Courtesy. And the thing that's, I have such a random story, right? One of the things that people don't know is I went on 2 missionary trips when I was in college to Mexico. And one, I helped build churches. And another one, I played soccer in prisons with the soccer team. And, those are good, so I have a heart for this. I have a lot of tattoos. I have one that says live to serve. I do. And the one thing I've always been really fascinated about is reconciliation. Like say what I grew up around Black women, like deep, like all over my tree, like saying what you say and what that's like standard, like duh, but I never felt like, in my other sort of walks of life, if you will, that there was ever any sort of like reconciliation. Like what happened? You guys just said what you had to say and you guys went away. And the movie Accidental Courtesy, Daryl Davis, is about just a jazz musician who befriends members of white supremacy groups. And he befriends them in a way in which they renounce their gear, their garb, their robes, right? And it's fascinating, no matter where you fall in sort of the spectrum of that, because I've heard it all. I really have. Some people have said, oh, Alan, like he's a sellout. I've heard people say, he's the best thing ever. I've heard all the things that you sort of hear, whatever in the spectrum of things, you know what I mean? And I just think at the end of the day, no matter where you fall, some of the attributes he's showing are undeniable. Courage. Or there's some scenes in which he's sitting across from people that you're just like, oh my gosh, of course. But I love the whole idea of trying to find a pathway where, it's not conversion, and Daryl's whole thing was like, how can you hate me if you don't know me? And he's somewhat controversial for sure. But the real thing about Daryl is my man is a legit jazz pianist and musician. And when I talk about legit, I'm talking about like, I play with Fats Domino. I played with Little Richard. Like my man can play like the boogie oogie, whatever. Like I know I'm probably butchering it, but like he got real hands. Mm-hmm. I seen him just walk into a lobby and sit down at a piano, and then like you look around, you're like, wow, like my man just got this whole place like on a vibe, just playing some stuff. So he's just an interesting character. The Ornstein brothers, Matt and Noah, they have an interesting lens for things. They always kind of have interesting projects. So that was a lot of fun. And then, I had never been to Austin before, facts. Yeah. And I was like, okay,
out here.
It was, and it kind of got me off guard. It caught me off guard, to be real. I was like, okay, I didn't have any idea. So being a part of that whole film festival was a really cool experience because I'd never gone to a film festival before, and then be, part of a film that's in it, and then the access, and then just how people watch movies, facts. Like people love movies. People can watch like 3, 4, 5 movies in a row. Like I can't do that. So, that was a fun project for sure. And something that I think about, is there going to be another sort of chapter in this act in which I sort of try to help? I'd much rather help people like yourselves, you know what I mean, get to where you want to do in the production space than sort of dip back into sort of any significant producer role where you're really, really taking every meeting and every lunch and every dinner.
Facts.
For sure.
So switching gears a little bit.
Yes.
Obviously, you mentioned some of the stuff you do from a mentorship, advocate, hero standpoint. Can you talk about your work with the Power 5 sports programs and U.S. Soccer? from the issues of like mental conditioning and personal development. I know we've talked offline about how important that is, for not only the youth, but as they build out their careers, like a lot of pressure. So what is it like with mental conditioning and just personal development?
Yeah, and kind of tell us like what that is. Like for some people who may not know like what mental conditioning is.
Yeah, that's a great point.
That is, L. That is, so
I grew up with it, so I'm like, I kind of like downplay. It's like, oh, that's what it is. But yeah, thanks, L, for that.
Yeah, it is. So I would, and I should have the most locked down sort of denotation of it, right, of what it means specifically. But what it really is in terms of getting your arms around it and sort of being sort of instantly fluent in it is conditioning your brain and your mindset is a real thing. And how do you do that? And why do you do that? You build your muscles and all that stuff for a reason. You get fit to run for 90. So it's the same mentality. It's not a different application. It's how do I come back from an own goal? Right? What do I do? How do I press the reset button? What am I going to do to get into a flow? What if I'm a super sub? What am I going to do to get into a game? A game's been going 100 miles an hour. Like, how do I jump into it? How do I become a good teammate? And I just think those are real things. And, working with Texas A&M and Florida State football, Alabama football, Michigan, it's a very specific skill set. It's very specific. And it's vertical, right? The strength and conditioning coach, right? All the way up to the head coach. It's what you're about. If you want to play up tempo, for example, at a Power 5 football school, guess what you do in the building? You walk fast, right? That's how granular they get with it. Like, make sure your actions are lining up with how you need to be. And what I've learned is that it is a separator, as you know, right? The Kobe mentality. But even like, I was joking with a team the other day that I've been working with. No one talks about Messi or Ronaldo's world-class recovery skills. I don't know how they recover between these games, especially Messi. Like, right? Like, how is that not a thing? Like, I feel like there should be as much YouTube stuff out there, and maybe I'm in the weeds too much, and my poor kids are like, oh my gosh, you're talking about this again. Like, but how is he able every 4 days to bring it? Every 4 days, what you need? You need a goal. You need 2 goals. How can I be better? How can I be fit for 90 mentally? How can I be, and I learned this. I got really lucky. So one of my graduate school classmates is a guy named Chad Bowling. He's director of mental conditioning, sports performance for the Yankees. Our other good friend is Trevor Moad.
Yeah, he was the one that taught me back in residency.
Was down in nose to space. Right now. And what I like right now, one of the big in vogue thing, I shouldn't say in vogue, but it's being neutral. Right? How are you not positive or negative? Like, how are you neutral? So, being around those programs, I learned a lot, but I also specifically was delivering effective communication skills. How do you effectively communicate? Not just adding the question into the answer, but how do you resolve conflict? How do you communicate in the quarterback room? How do you navigate, any sort of conversation? So it's a lot of fun being a part of those programs, and thankful for that exposure, because you really get to see, again, like how important it is. I love student athletes. Like, if you ask me my favorite population, like, man, I'm a sucker for that college student athlete. I just love it. Like, I think the ones that embrace it are they're about that life. And I just love to see how they're able to shine and what they're able to do. So, those are the things that I did. And on the U.S. soccer side, it was really important for Jurgen to sort of fill the gaps as he was building it out. And I think it was modeling the behavior that Jurgen wanted to see, for sure. And I hopefully, Gooch and B still talk to me, so I couldn't have been that bad. Same with Eddie and Josie. So at least if they hated me, I think they would have ghosted me a long time ago. So at least I earned their trust, right, in some sort of way, sort of tongue in cheek. But there was just about like, how do you communicate like style, and how do you communicate? It was more on the project side, actually. What can you educate about the players, about the country they're going to? What mindset stuff do they really want to hear? When we brought in a lot of different people, Jurgen was curious, and not all of them worked. I'll be honest. Not every session I had with the team worked. I remember having a really candid conversation with I love Clint Dempsey, man. Like, just, I love Clint. And Clint one time was like, I'm old, right? and it was like respect, though. He was more like, I like what you're saying. And and not like I'm being dismissive or anything. It was just like, I appreciate what you're saying. I'm just, I'm a little bit older now. Yeah. And it just made me realize that, like,
I've been through the trenches,
Yeah. Oh, more so than even I had, right? At that level. It wasn't like I'd been on a bunch of different national team staffs before and been through qualifying and stuff. But, Clint's someone I think I earned his respect too. Because I think at the end of the day, it's like, do you bring value to the setup? I got to do everything. I got to help plan. I got to help Martin Vasquez find training spots. I got to set up the training field. I got to go on cool dinners. I had to make sure we knew where the espresso spots were for the coaches, and, it better not be late for the coach's bus either. You get left for sure, so I learned a lot of great lessons. Yeah, you get left for sure if you're not there when it's time to go. And if the coach decides they want to go 15 minutes earlier than the 15 minutes they set. So, but what I think, it's just a lot like parenting. You got to be about it. You got to model the behavior you want. You want your kids to be clean and organized. You got to be clean and organized. And I've learned this. I've had, as Amobi knows, L. And I think important to kind of like just put it out there for what it is. I definitely have had all the conversations you can have, sort of this cycle in terms of hiring and front office positions. And, the failure part is difficult. But if I'm going to be about being resilient and perseverance, persistent and having and showing perseverance, then I have to be about it myself. And I just rely on my faith and spirituality. What's meant for me will be. And I just have to stay focused. And as earlier mentioning about being patient, it's out there. I know what I bring to the table. And right now, I've never been more motivated to get back into the game and be back on that roller coaster. I didn't miss it for a while, right? I like 9 to 5. I'd never had a 9 to 5 really before, really. Like, I was like, okay. I mean, yeah, you weekend, you whatever you do, but I was like, hey, this is what people do on Saturdays? Okay. I was like, this is cool. Like, I'm at the game with all my kids and all this stuff, as opposed to like gobbling up a random Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. So, I definitely think I'm at that space in my life where, some organization is going to get someone who's really focused in and has the bandwidth to do it. But, the mental conditioning, it's about just believing in people, and it's intentional. It's really, really intentional. So, but it's one of the things that I'm passionate about, but it's also one of the things that honestly, Ellen and Amobi, like, being a good person is a really, really good place to start. Yeah. It is a really good place to start. And I would just tell anyone, like, that's what it's about. And if you have a heart for others, give and live for others, and it'll all come back to you. It will.
No, that's important that you said that, because mental conditioning is really important, not just from the player standpoint, but just from a general concept. You mentioned your role with, Jurgen Klinsmann, and obviously you talked about fans. They can only see from the outside. And Jurgen introduced a lot of different things that down the road, people realize, like, this was helpful. You see the national team now, things that we were talking about. Well, we don't need players playing at the highest level. We have a whole squad full of Champions League players. Can you talk about, his strategy almost, or kind of give like a case of why Jurgen was good for the U.S. soccer system?
Wow, that's a very good question. And
hey, you don't have to put 2 Cents Sports on the map.
Well, like, look, here's what I would say is, and I think to put a bow on what we're talking about, sort of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? That staff that Jurgen put together was one of the most diverse staffs I've ever seen in this country. Like, full-time woman, nutritionist on the staff. Myself on the staff. Masasaki Hana, Japanese, on the staff. With Andy Herzog, Austrian, on the staff. Chris Woods, Englishman, on the staff. Jeremy Hassler from Tennessee, like balls deep, crazy. I don't even know what color that is, orange, on the staff. And we traveled the world together. Like that was our band. And there's a picture, and I just like it meant something. And Jurgen never saw color. He just didn't, because, and I'm not saying other people do, but there's never been a staff like it since or before then. So that's a legacy I don't think people talk about that I'm really thankful for, because I met some lifelong friends. We won a lot. Like that also helps. Like I think it was 13 on the spin, right? Like some real good W's, some really good results. So, it makes travel easier, right? And Jurgen was always gracious about access. I learned a lot from him in terms of being where I needed to be, respecting the sort of team boundaries, if you will. Like, I think the locker room is sacred. Facts. I do. I do. I think as a front office person and a person on the staff, if you're not really doing triage, if you're not fueling for performance, I don't think you need to be there. And I learned that boundary. I respect that boundary. I do. I think that's something that in my next endeavor, I'll totally, I think there's a place you need to be. You need to be present at training, but not necessarily every training. You need to have a rhythm and a routine to things like that. So on the player side, let's be honest. Let's distill it down. What was Jurgen asking for? The next level. What's your next level? If you're at level B, can you get to level A? If you're level A, can you get to level A+. And ultimately, that's what he did, is he challenged those players during the pool to get to your other level. He really did. And I think that's the bit of the legacy, But I also would say, look, I recently reconnected with Greg Berhalter, and I think this is important. A lot of people are more than willing to post up a black square on social media, right? And say that's supportive. But I really do think Greg Berhalter is genuine and authentic. I do. And I appreciate what he's doing. And I appreciate his mindfulness for this unbelievable young crop of not only young black players doing it, right? Yeah. In Europe. So we're talking about Jurgen, but just all these young guys. And I think Greg has sort of embodied that again, about be as good as you can be where you're at. Don't be content just because it's comfortable. And I think that's one of the things that Jurgen was about. He really was about it. He was genuine. And people, used to make jokes about, oh, your boss wants to fly helicopters. Your boss wants to learn these languages. Your boss wants to do this. It's he wants to better himself at every opportunity, And dude was fit still. Those coaches runs.
He still used to play.
Hey, those Amobi, but those coaches runs, bro.
Y'all was doing the empty stomach runs.
Man, the empty stomach runs. But staff went one way, players went the other way. Man, you got to keep up with coach. I was like, Jurgen out here, he was that guy when he used to play. So, man, he was, man. Jurgen played. I sent him a video real quick recently. You remember the old back pass rule? Mm-hmm. They were playing against Denmark, I think, in the Euros. I don't know if it was a final or not, but Schmeichel must have had 80 back passes. And the only person I saw pressuring for Germany the whole night was Jurgen. And I was like, respect, dude. You got an extra 8 kilometers just making him pick up the ball, So, but the thing about being a part of that is being an Army brat, to bring it full circle, man. I just appreciated the red, white, and blue. One of the coolest memories I have is at Sporting KC in their stadium. Man, they had it decked out one time, Independence Day, crazy bunting everywhere. And I remember walking out of the tunnel, just before kickoff, I've never seen a sea of patriotism like that. And I think about those responses, those memories too. Like, it's important to represent the U.S. and understand what that's like. And that's something that Jurgen, as a non-U.S. person, although his family, his wife is American, his kid American, he had a lot of respect for the American flag. I mean, and he wants to embody that. So, look, every national team coach's tenure, as I learned, better than the end. And I was just thankful for the end, because the end is always really hard. And oftentimes you don't get to say how it goes. That's for sure.
No, I appreciate you giving that insight, because a lot of people, obviously from the outside looking in, and then, from my standpoint, I thought there was like a kind of a media ganging up on because they didn't like his methods, but he did definitely challenge the guys. He definitely brought people in. He definitely gave us a new way of thinking, and making us think like, it doesn't matter if we're Americans, we should strive to be the best of, where we can go. And that's no disrespect to MLS or, USL. And he called Jordan Morris when he was in college. So I thought that was really important. And then you're starting to see the fruits of his labor now.
And you should have seen Jordan Morris in that camp. You should have seen Jordan Morris in that camp. Facts. Like, Jordan Morris was beasting in that camp. Like, he was unplayable a little bit. Like, no, like, that's a real, so I give him credit for that. And Jurgen his energy, he was about that recruitment, man. He was. And it'd be really interesting, the real interesting thing actually to do a real proper postmortem is to ask those guys now how they feel, because they now have the wisdom, the gray hairs, the maturity, the rings around the oak tree to have a different perspective. I'd be interesting to see how they felt then to how they feel now. And
sounds like
I think a national team coach.
Dog.
Yeah, it does. I mean, look, honestly, because Greg Berhalter, said this the other day in his press conference, is like, he's now understanding it is what it is. Yeah. In that job, I think being any national team coach is difficult. Think about it. Yeah. You're bringing in a new group of people. Even if you have your core,
every camp you have to, because you have to constantly look. Yeah.
Or players are injured too.
That's too much stress for me.
Oh man, as I've gotten older, man, that's what I tell the coaches I work with. I'm like, dude, are you running? Are you eating right? Like, you got to take care of your stress. Like, I'm not trying to be that guy, but I'm also like, man, these games are hard to win. I think these games are so hard to win, man. Like, I don't know why I want to be about it. That's why I get so nervous for my kids. I'm like, man, 3 points. That's why it's 3 points. It's hard, man. Yeah. It's difficult. It gives me a lot to people, for sure.
But before we move on to the next segment, you definitely want to touch on, you talked about, your upbringing. You talked about, diversity and inclusion. You talked about, everything as it pertains to, being Black in America and then in the soccer landscape. Obviously, growing up as an Army brat, and then obviously with this racial divide that we're going through. Can you talk about that dynamic, and then obviously what you're doing with SCORE and the work that they do to kind of combat everything that's going on in the community, in the landscape that we're going through right now?
What I've been telling people close to me, and even just in this whole sort of spot, is back my whole life, it's never been more important 5 or 6 years. Like, it's just so important to me now. Like, and it just sort of crept up on me. Part of it, having your father pass away, you sort of start to see your legacy differently, no doubt. And he grew up in a really charged racial climate. I mean, I recently told a class I spoke in, it was the day after the George Floyd verdict, actually, at class. So everyone wanted to ask, how's the black professor feel about, George Floyd, the Derek Chauvin trial verdict. Excuse me, I misspoke there. George Floyd was not on trial. The Derek Chauvin trial. And I realize I'm more acutely aware of like my Blackness in so many different ways. And one of the things that happened to me was my mom sent me a text. My mom was born on a plantation, Wildwood Plantation in rural Mississippi. Like, it's not that long ago, right? Like, my grandmother is, my mother's 5 of 15 kids in a sharecropper home. my father almost was killed by a Klan sheriff in Leland, Mississippi. And my parents pushed me so far. Trust me, Montecito and Santa Barbara, California is so far removed from Greenville and Leland, Mississippi. But that was my parents' mechanism. That was what they wanted from me. We're going to get them as far away as possible, right? And what it did was sort of remove me from a lot of what I was seeing and feeling, and I just kind of got to accept the microaggressions and things like that we just sort of assume as daily life. But, SCORE was amazing because Eddie Pope and I talk a lot. Eddie was like, I've been talking to Dante Washington a lot. Dante's like, well, I've been talking to Ali Curtis a lot. It was part of the formation in the beginning. And then we started having all these concentric circle conversations. Oh, Evan Whitfield was talking to Tony Santa, and we just all decided to get together and just start talking. And it was really just about fellowship and community, honestly. And it was great. And because we had all these islands of success, everyone's been really successful in their own islands. Kobe Jones, Rob Smith. I mean, Danielle Slayton's part of the team now. Kim Crabb. I didn't know this, and this is real truth. So I didn't know Kim Crabb was the first Black woman to ever play for the U.S. Women's National Team. Gooch knows her and was like, hey, we should have her part of the group. And she's fantastic. She's like everyone's favorite aunt at the cookout for facts. Like, you want her around. And she was the first, right? So, I'm just so thankful for that group. And there's a lot of different spaces that people can play in, right? But the space I've chosen for the work I'm doing inside SCORE is representation. I really want to see us become, to see us more on the benches, to see us more as director of operations for Division I soccer programs, to see us more in the pipeline, scouting, recruiting, academy. And I think it's coming. I do. So I'm really passionate about that work. And the first step is communication and awareness.
That's facts.
And hopefully there's some motivation and inspiration, because the one thing I said is it's really disheartening to hear about an opportunity in a press release. And that was happening a lot. And I'm just thankful for the group, man, more than anything. And we're supporting the Black Players for Change. Justin Morrow is just a real one. That entire group there, I just grown to appreciate, and we talk often or collaborating a lot on projects. And they're really focused on the social justice issues, right? And then if we're coming alongside focus on representation, then I think between the two of us, right, like there's starting to some things that can happen along the way. But the main thing right now is it's just a really good collection of people who've been there and did that, like Gooch and Bees. I mean, caps on caps, Eddie Pope. So, part of me is also like, I grew up covering these guys, right? But a part of me is also like, I wanted to be Eddie Pope, but I'm, 5'8" on a good day.
No, but tell us what SCORE stands for.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I should have that in my messaging for sure. So it's a soccer collective on racial equity. And what we're hopeful is that, and I should give a shout out to Major League Soccer, who's included us in a lot of the backroom conversations right now. The league hired a new DE&I chief officer, Shola Winley. But someone asked me the other day, like, what's the league really doing? What are they doing? And I'm like, and I was like, I'm not going to be defensive, but I'm going to tell you, I've never seen so many talented Black executives in the league before.
That's facts.
I mean, it's so awesome. Dr. Jamil Northcutt, Chidozie, Tunde, I mentioned Shola, like I'm like Taylor Wells Marbury, like there's so many good people. I'm like, oh, okay. And that's the modeling.
Yeah.
If so, think about it. If the league is going to have the clubs increase their equity, right?
We just recently saw it with Darius Barnes.
That's right. They should do the same thing. And I'm happy for Darius is in Charlotte now.
Yeah.
And
we're going to have him on the show soon.
That's right. And he's a great example. And he's someone that I know the league is going to use, because the old school narrative is, and I think it's important, the new school is like you have to lift as you climb. as Darius climbs, he's got to lift others, or the more, as the kids say, send the elevator back down for me. And I think that's another thing. Understanding everyone's situation is different. It's hard. I have so much empathy. I did this workshop beginning of the year at Morehouse College, did this social impact workshop through the NFL. Man, I went in thinking one way and I came out the other. And it was so informative and so meaningful. And one of the things that I learned is that you can't eat the whole apple, right? You got to take bites at it. And it's also understanding where people's situations are. And so many people are isolated in these roles of decision making. And I have a lot more empathy toward that. I just want to be a part of it. So we get together every Thursday, this group, and it's part like catching up and giving Danielle Slayton some love because Santa Clara won like today. Talking about what we're going to do for coming up for the All-Star game in LA, talking about the initiatives and programming that we're a part of. And then we're still trying to find our way. That's the cool thing. But, the pandemic, like, as you know, like there's so many great organizations that started in bad times, right? And without the pandemic, we wouldn't have ever gotten together. And I've strengthened relationships that I will retain, and there's new ones I have that I'm looking forward to growing through the years. And I can't wait to the day where like I'm so excited in Colorado, right? Wolde, who I've gotten to know a lot over the last couple of years, and Robin Frazier, like that's a cool, like those guys are on staff together. And then what's going to be next? Like there's going to be a team that's going to have a black GM, a black head coach, and a black top assistant. Like it's going to happen one day. It is. And I can't wait for that time. The Miami Dolphins, I believe, are the only team, I believe, in NFL right now that have that combination, but there's going to be others. I look at other leagues. I look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, what they did. I look at their staff. But then it's also about your experience. And then when you start to understand Bruce Arians, not to get off on the off-ramp, and you're like, oh, well, he roomed with the first black football player at Virginia Tech. And he's tight with the Barbers. Like he babysat for Tiki and Rondé Barber. Like, so you go, oh, so my man had a heart for this work. And then he realized when he got to where he was, if he wasn't going to see, opportunity as something that was elusive to other people. And I think the best is ahead. I'm excited about the work we're doing. It's slow at times, but that's how it is. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you don't get to control every player's health when you're calling in a player for a national team. If you're going to operate outside of a cycle, like the U.S. team is right now, every club doesn't have to release everyone. You know what I'm saying? Like just bringing it into sort of a soccer way. So I think of it the same way. And I think there's never been more of an emphasis on opening the pool of people. And I'm happy to be a part of it, man. I'm just happy to be a part of it. And, it's all about giving back and doing real stuff. If you're not doing real stuff at this point, like that's something everyone's got to kind of live with. And, I'm kind of haunted by the legacy stuff every morning.
Yeah. Is there any way people could support, like if they want to like learn more? I know we're going to have that in the show notes, but just right off the bat.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. What they could do is simply what we set up is really, my life is so much like a soccer sort of quote book, but, play the way you're facing. You know what I mean? That's very much the way we kind of operate. And so it's very simple. You can go to score-na.com. And I appreciate you guys including the score notes in the notes as well. And then just send an email. We get all the email. We actually go through the inbox, and then people are reaching out to us looking for connections, looking for opportunities, and things like that. And we're going to be sort of rolling out a much more sort of LinkedIn version of that, which I'm excited about. As you know, I've been really passionate about communicating to our group and our community, and we're going to have much more of a sort of live functioning LinkedIn where people can, in the world we live in, right, upload their stuff, be a part of it, be a part of the body of knowledge, because I think the Black executive very much represents the culture of modernity. I do. I hear a lot of these execs talking about a modern club. Well, I think about sort of the landscape, and I'm really excited about some of the people I've met recently that are just talented, exciting people. And, I'm always in Amobi's ear about stuff, like for real,
He's trying to get me to retire today.
I'm trying to get him to retire today because I think he would like hire me, but it's important though, to really get back. And the other thing I'll say real quick is I'm starting to see like really cool little offshoots is people inside the network are starting to communicate to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And people who have opportunities, things like that, are doing that. And I'm like, this is cool. Like we got our own sort of thing going right now where people are, because the next stage is supporting each other. I was part of a Black NFL coaches Zoom call this summer. It's like 700 coaches. It wasn't even a Zoom call. It was on one of those crazy platforms, right? But it's all these coaches like in the league. I was like, wow, I had no idea. In and around the league, currently, recently, but it's just an organic group and they sort of just support each other. And I'm like, I didn't even know, like, where it is. And eventually, I do want to have that sort of, if you will, sort of body of knowledge, right? Our own scouts, our own coaches, where we kind of have our own sidebars, where we're trying to, if I'm playing Amobi's team on a Wednesday, I'm trying to beat him. But if he calls me up on Thursday about something else we've been talking about, like maybe his staff or something else, like we're good. Just on game day, maybe not so much, but otherwise, but like that's the boundary. That's what I've learned though.
Yeah.
There's so many of these coaches. I thought all these college football coaches like hate each other. Come on, man. Some of these guys have the same agent. Like, come on, like facts. Oh. So they fish together. They go trips together. Now on game day, you wouldn't know it, but that's what it is. And that's why I started to understand. I'm like, oh, these dudes like, it's of course it's like playing your friend. Like you think about that sometimes, like what it's like playing your friend, but it's the same sort of like mentality, right? Like how can we better, each other? And I tell people this all the time, never take criticism from anyone you wouldn't take advice from. Never take criticism from anyone you wouldn't take advice from. And that is when you're at that circle, at that table, as I'm saying, fellas, like, what that's like. Like you may be going against that person, but everyone respects each other. It goes back to I was just fascinated with like mob movies in college. I used to watch all those movies.
I'm a big mob
really?
guy.
Okay, so we're gonna have another off-thread conversation, man, on some deep. Yeah. So I used to always like take notes on that and try to run our little college team like that, like a bunch of guys. Oh man, we move into the back table of the dining commons right now. This is before phones, though. It's easy back then. Now these cats on the phones, So for sure.
So appreciate it. What you got? I know we're gonna switch it up real quick.
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and jump into one of our favorite segments of the show. No card, yellow card, red card. So this is a rapid fire segment of the show where I'll read off some news topics. It could be sports related, it could be pop culture related, whatever.
I'm ready for this part, man. This is the part. this is the fanboy part, man. Like you don't even you tell them do your thing for the podcast, but I just want you to know, like I already am ready to go.
All right, cool. My boy is a loyal watcher, loyal listener.
Yes, very much so.
So for those who aren't familiar, the rules of the game go. No card is I agree with the topic. Yellow card is I can go either way. Red card is I disagree. And then we'll give an explanation of why we gave each card or gave your card for that specific topic. So let's jump right into it. So no card, yellow card, red card. So a parody account today called Indy Kalia tweeted out that Chelsea has submitted a transfer package to Spurs exchanging Timo Werner, Tammy Abraham, and $10 million for Harry Kane. So this is obviously fake, but what card would you give this deal as a Chelsea supporter, Amobi?
Okay.
I'm giving that a red card. We do not want Harry Kane on our squad. I'm going to give Timo another year. He had a good year if you think about it. Obviously, it's not like high
Oh,
level.
if you think about it. Okay, what am I not thinking about? Real quick, what am I not thinking about, L? Tell me. I'm willing to own where my team is in the standings, L. Are you? I know you are too. I'm willing to call out my table position.
All things
I know my fellow Gunner is too, but what about you? Now you got, okay, Timo apologist. Go ahead, homie. I want to hear it.
All things considered, he definitely could have had a better season, but it's still, his first year in. So we're gonna let it slide a little bit. He's getting used to. He had Lampard for the first half. Tuchel's giving him the confidence. So I would rather see it, play its course for another season than Harry Kane. He's a little bit older. I'm not. Nah. I like Timo Werner better.
Would you rather have Giroud or Kane?
Ooh, Kane's not going to be coming off the bench though. If you have Kane, I would rather have. I'm fine where we're at now. We're Werner and Giroud. But I mean, if we could get Kane and not get rid of Werner, all right, cool. But I don't think that's going to happen.
I'm going to give it a red card too, but only because I think Werner's going to get right this summer with Germany.
Yeah,
I think he's going to get right. I did like this is how I would be thinking about it if it was my team. I'd like to see him get right this summer. And I might just be calling Franz and whomever else is in charge and Yogi and just stressing them about taking care of my boy. Love him up. We're going to give him his 21 days when the tournament's over. But I think if he has an electric tournament, I think he brings that with him.
Yeah.
I do along the way. Kane got that ankle. I need that medical crazy, you know what I mean? So I'm gonna, I'm thinking with my executive hat, as if it's really my team, and I'm an Arsenal guy, as L knows. So I want you to do bad deals, but I'm gonna take the red card on this one for sure, though.
Yeah, I want Kane out of the Premier League. Dude is a thorn in our back in multiple ways with his, his questionable tactics that he has. Yeah. All right. So next up, Karim Benzema is back on the France squad for the Euros after being exiled for blackmailing a teammate. So what card are we giving the French Federation for bringing him back amid this ongoing investigation? Moby.
That's a good point. I'll give it a yellow card. Just because, why now is an interesting point. It's not like he had a crazy season. I was all right, we're gonna dismiss all the things that's going on. He's been playing well. Someone made a joke on Twitter. There's they saw that France was in the group of death, so they're all right, we need to bring him back. But all jokes aside, obviously this whole ongoing investigation, that I would have hoped that would have been cleared beforehand, or at least they know something is gonna, a decision is gonna be made before. So maybe stuff that we don't know behind the scenes. And I know Alan can attest to that, being a broadcaster and knowing stories and not being able to leak it. And we're just waiting to see what happens on Twitter. So I'm gonna give it a yellow card.
Okay.
I'm gonna say no card. I'm gonna got no card. And I think it's been so long. And I think, I'm trusting Deschamps here. I think he knows how to tweak this team. And that group is no joke. I think people need to go ahead and just check that group real quick. You know what I mean? I know the Euros are expanded, but man, people talk about collusion in UEFA. I'm none of those federations got any juice. They all ended up in the same group. So you might as well come up with another story. But man, it's interesting. You said something that almost made me change my mind in terms of Benzema's season. But I just feel like he's just another tool. Right? He's just another tool for him. And out of nowhere, all of a sudden, is he that guy? Maybe he's got more of an injury history on some guys. Maybe he knows. Maybe he's hey, I can't play Mbappe like I did, in Russia, which basically all the time. Maybe he knows hey, I'm going to need to bring him off, a goal up, you know what I mean? To really manage him. And maybe Benzema's the guy. I also wonder if Benzema's well-liked.
Yeah, he definitely is.
You know what I mean? I don't know, it's a team thread on fire. Where people we really about to just
Mbappe made a post. You can see
what
people
I'm saying?
doing stories. And I think especially coming off a World Cup victory, you need something to like reignite the group, you know? So I think from that standpoint, that's your exec hat talking. I think you made a good point about that.
I think national team coaches are always doing that anyway. Like they just, you know, like what can I do to, because that roster is pretty set. That's the thing about it. You know, it's not like that roster speaks for itself. So for sure.
They're so stacked, it's ridiculous.
Man.
Yeah, I can't wait to see Benjamin's next video now. It's gonna be epic. All right, last one. So the Houston Dynamo recently, or they're in the process of selling the Dynamo. It's the Dynamo and the Dash, right?
Yeah, the Dynamo Dash and the stadium with it.
Man.
For
a total of $400 million to real estate developer Ted Siegel. So what card are we giving this deal? Amobi.
Someone made a great point. Shout out to my guy Jordan Gardner. He said, interesting that they sold for $400 million when they haven't reported like they make under $25 million in revenue. But hey, it's good for MLS. Good for the original owners. I know me and Alan were talking offline. It's like, how can we get in some of these, you know, some of these deal flow? But I think it's good. I think the investors already involved in different sports across, you know, like I think he invested in like a different league, not soccer related, but he seems like he's invested in sports. And by the like word on the streets, like the original owners weren't really, they rebranded, but they still weren't doing as much as they could have within the community and you know, just within the team. You know, Houston is like, they were one of the top franchises, you know, when Dom Kinnear and Stu and Jeff and Brad Davis and Ching and Kofi and all those guys.
Going to finals, those guys.
So how can they get back into that? And then how can they tap into the community too? Because Houston, a big Nigerian population, a big Latinx population, and they have not done anything regarding that. So hopefully this new ownership can build that. So I know he can call up someone on this on the show right now. He probably have a couple of ideas, but
you know, I mean, gosh, you know, in some ways I want to be saying green card doesn't sound right because that's money, that's bad. Like 400 million, you know what I mean? Like that's a real number. And you're right. People who are really deep in the weeds, and Amobi and I trying to get some sort of VC, some equity fund, finder's fee somehow, some way, just falling into our lap. But credit to the league and whoever closing these deals are hard. These term sheets are hard, man. Like, I don't think anyone has any idea of how. That's
the first thing I look for. Is like, who got the deal done? That's the first thing.
Me too. Yeah. I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated by what it takes, what were the sticking points, what were the concessions, who did what on the due diligence. I think it's a no card because someone's going to figure out Houston. Mm-hmm. And Amobi said it perfectly. Fourth largest city?
Top 5 for sure.
Like, it's all the soccer community aspects. It's got your African population, your Latino population. You have your affluent suburban soccer population. I feel like between those three, you should be killing it. And it's just a different approach. And maybe this owner's got a different vision. I'm sure there's a lot of other factors that go into people's community, you know, how they feel about the team, but they got a cool little stadium. They got a championship history. And I think organizations are very much like our weight, like set point theory. Like, you're always going to be around whatever your weight is. And if you're a championship organization, you will come back to your championship organization ways. You see it in big sports like the Lakers or the Celtics or, you know, or whatever these other organizations. It's sometimes the orbit is slower. Even UCLA basketball is a great example. Like, you know, it's eventually going to be right back in there. You know, I mean, no one knew they had to go the long way. But when they were in that game, when Zhang hit that shot, you were like, of course, it's the same. Like, it's back.
It's embedded. So,
it's embedded. So that's why I think it's so important, like, these organizations like build a real culture, because it's your legacy. And it's the stars or so you remember your championship legacy. And the job of an organization at the top is to provide innovation that expands on the tradition of being a champion. And if you're not doing that, that's how you can be Alabama football, I've learned, right? That's how you can win all the time. And then when you have those setbacks, you know specifically where the gap is in performance, and you attack it, you fix it, and you move on. Like, that's internal shop is so important to have point. So when things go bad, you know what it is. That's why we do an MRI. Oh, it's only my knee. Oh, thank God, it's not the rest of my body. You know what I mean? Like, that's why we live in diagnostics, but sometimes we get funny when it comes to our teams, especially our soccer teams sometimes. Like, everything else takes hold, our fandom, the pints, whatever it is, man, just a frustration, mid-table results, it clouds our vision, but it's no different than that, though. It really isn't.
For sure. It'll be interesting to see what they do with it, if they actually improve, or if it's just a quick money and investment grab. Play? Yeah, definitely. It's always a real estate play somewhere. So we may see some. Well, that's the one thing.
The stadium was a thing.
He's gonna look for a way to.
The stadium was the part I was looking at the most.
That's his product. Yeah.
I mean, real property.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. Real property.
Hey, James Harden got a nice little cash out though.
Oh, he got bought out too, you think? Or he stayed on?
They're buying the whole thing, right? So he's part of the previous ownership group.
Oh, that's true.
You would think he got it.
I mean, again, like, I just need to see Amobi and I just need 2 minutes to just look at the documents real quick.
Yeah. Hey, someone give me a GM spot. I'm making Allen my how do you say it in mob terms? Consigliere?
Yeah. How you say it? I'm just that guy, You're gonna be I'm just that guy. Like, I'm just in the back room. That's right. I appreciate that for sure.
Hey, might be some opportunities out there. You never know.
That's true.
But yeah, that's it for this week for No Card, Yellow Card, Red Card.
Yo, Alan, thank you so much. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Oh, that's a great question. I appreciate that. Sorry, I was definitely sort of using the California sunset as my back here, as I'm much more of a silhouette now. But online, I'm definitely on Instagram, the father of 3 studs, just like it sounds. It's basically like my photo album of my kids. I'm very proud of my kids, but I definitely make sure I'm staying connected there. On Twitter, Hopkins Jr. for sure. I'm there as well. And then, people, they want to find me on LinkedIn. I'm not hard to reach out to as well. I'm about my network. We're kind of only as good as our team sometimes in a real way. People have been so good with me about their time that's why I try to make sure that I reciprocate that. So, it's interesting. We were talking about following up, and I know we're sort of wrapping our time is, I aim to be that person who does answer your email, I'll carve out time, because if Siggy Schmidt didn't do that for me, or Jurgen Klinsmann, or anyone else, or Doug Hamilton, like, I wouldn't have had that stuff. So anyone listening that's in a position in which they're too busy sometimes to respond to people that are reaching out, and maybe they're very vague about how they're reaching out because they don't know how to be very specific because they're young or are immature in the business side, like, just take that moment. I just think our community has got such a big heart, but we don't show it as much, I think about that all the time is like, like, I'm afraid of Columbus. Like, their fans, they make anything happen. Oh, you're taking our team? No, you're not. You're changing our no, you're not. Yeah. So what if the crew decide like, oh, we're just going to be like social warriors? Those will start making stuff happen in that community, because they clearly are the most effective group of people. And I don't say that as like a non sequitur in a random way. It's just to say that, the last thing I want to say sort of is just like, just give back, do something for someone else, man. Like, it's important. Be a steward, be a mentor, be an advisor, have a heart for other people. Because at the end, that's the stuff that makes us who we are. And that's what we want to be. Like, we want to be a together community. And we only want to be fractured because of the people and teams we support, but not about how we feel about equity or inclusion or kneeling for or social impact or whatever it is. Like U.S. soccer, our community is so small that we can be better. It's a very homogeneous group, even though we don't look alike. We all know, if the three of us played a game right now where we just named a person, you do the game, you just name someone until someone can't name something. We could probably do an hour and a half of personalities in soccer and none of us would miss.
You could do it yourself and not miss.
But I'm saying, like, it's like, I think we're all so connected, and that's my goal, is that we continue to be connected on all these issues. And I'm just happy to do my little part, man. I was just going to say that, I just appreciate you guys. It's been a fun time. We've definitely had a lot to talk about. I'm sure the post-production is going to be a beast. My apologies. Let me send someone on the Grubhub. I got you on the late night edit. I know what that's like. My bad. I got you. I'm going to take care of you, man. Like, send me that Venmo. I got you on the Venmo. But, look, I just appreciate what you guys are doing. It means something to me. I'm happy for this platform, and I'm just excited to be a part of this journey. And we got some cool stuff to do together. Let's do it. I'm always worth the time and happy to have a conversation about anything that can be some real cool stuff. So just thank you guys for being part of it, and hope some people enjoyed it and got a good sweat in if they're running, burns a couple extra calories. It's beach season. It's beach season. Right, to close it up. You said it was beach season, so we got to get right.
Nah, but thank you once again, Alan. I know we're going to connect soon. Carson, if you're listening to this, Carson, friend and family of the show, your record has been broken. 2 Cents FC show. We just broke the record for longest podcast. Thank you, Alan. A lot of gems. I'm definitely going to listen to this and run it back. El, what you got?
I mean, definitely gonna tap in with you, Alan. So we will be having conversations in the very near future. Within the week, we'll be having another conversation. Ty, I know you listening to this. Everything he was saying about Columbus, let's tap in. But yeah, that's our show for the week. Subscribe, rate, and review helps us get discovered. Follow us on the socials at 2 Cents FC. Check out our merch at 2centsports.shop. Got some new stuff coming out very soon, so stay tuned to that. And also tweet us your comments on the show. What did you think about the conversation? Were there any questions you have for Alan? You definitely have his socials, so tap in with him, ask him those questions as well. Until next week, y'all. Peace out.
Peace.